Very. So lesson number 5. If you guys remember last time, I'm going to go a quick history, a quick glance back into what we studied. The first class we spoke about Bia, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. The 3 ego-centered worlds, right? Self-aware worlds. It's page 143. Sorry, yeah, just before that, lesson 5. And we said that corresponds to the person's garments, the garments of the soul, which is in Hebrew, machshava, dibur, v'maaseh, thought, speech, and action. By the way, I have some books if anyone doesn't have. You didn't bring, I have one.
Yes, thanks, Rabbi.
Where's the black?
And we spoke about, working on our behavior. Our behavior we will have control over, our thought, speech, and action. That was the first class, basically. The second class, we spoke about the world of Atzilut, the highest of the 4 worlds, which is also a creation. It's an entity, but it is the world of emanation, which means it is a world which is just a mirror to godliness which comes before. So it's it doesn't feel itself, it doesn't have its own ego. And in Atzilut, we spoke about the 10 sfirot, the 10 attributes, the 3 intellectual ones and the 7 emotional ones, and how they also correspond to the soul. We also have 10 attributes. We have 3 intellectual and 7 emotional ones. So that's what we spoke about the second class. The third class we spoke about
The harmony between the
the third class, right? So the third class that was the fourth class. The third class we spoke about Or Ein Sof, which is basically the infinite light of God, which is before any world. Okay, so we're working our way up. You can have a look at the map and you'll be able to follow along. And that corresponds to the soul itself, higher than any attributes and any characteristics. And then in the fourth class, we spoke about Tohu and Tikkun, right? Chaos, the world of chaos, and the world of order. The world of chaos being the source of the animal soul, and the world of order being the source of the godly soul. Right? We obviously stressed that the animal soul is not bad. It's just egoistic. It just wants to do. It just thinks about its own gratification. Sees short-term gratification. It sees what it wants. It's looking for pleasures. The godly soul sees the bigger picture. It listens to its intuition more. It's more of a right. And then that was basically the past few classes. Today we are going to talk about the great concealment, right? Which in Hebrew is tzimtzum. Tzimtzum. Now, before we start, sometimes you are struggling with something, right? You have a terrible, you have a big challenge, right? It can either be a lot of stress from work, it can be relationships, it can be, depression or something. And, you think, what is giving me the strength to not allow this challenge to crush me completely, to bring me down, right? What's my source of strength? What's my source of perseverance that will allow me to overcome this? And this, hopefully, by the end of this class, we'll have an answer to this question. This is the question, and based as we try to talk about things in the spiritual sense and in a practical sense, we're hopefully gonna talk about that towards the end. But anyway, so you have what is a symptom? What is the great concealment? You have before everything was created, right? We said that there was Or Ein Sof, right? Infinite light, infinity, complete infinity. What was the moment when creation was able to become into being? How do you get from infinity to finity, to finite, to right? And I'll give an example. Every drastic change has something which triggers the drastic change.
Big Bang.
The Big Bang, right? Or you have
Singular, what's it called? The singular.
singular.
Singular. Before the Big Bang, there was one thing, and then from
know.
there, I don't know how to explain.
Asking the wrong guy. I don't know about the Big Bang.
It's the wrong weather.
I don't know about the Big Bang.
You guys want the air conditioner?
Big Bang. Well, I'll give an example. You ask someone, you meet a Native American, for example. Yeah, you ask him, how did America look before the not a Native American which lived under the British rule, right? How did it look? Right, so he'll describe to you how life was then, and then how is America today? America today is very different than what he would describe. Right? What was the moment which allowed this big change? So there's the shot which was heard through the world or something. That in America, that's what started the revolution, right? You can say the same thing with Australia. I mean, every drastic change, there is the trigger, the
like
world.
A catalyst?
Yeah, I think World War II started like originally there was a
someone shot a student.
Yeah, assassination of
the students.
Yeah, and that it just started, completely blew up. So everything has this moment.
Start, the beginning of something.
So what's the moment when infinity can turn into finite? So once you have, as we spoke about once in the example, right? You have finite beings, some very, very great beings, and some less great beings, but they're all finite. So they're all in relation to each other, right? You have $1 trillion and $1. There's unbelievable distance, but $1 trillion and an unlimited amount of dollars. The difference between $1 trillion and $1 is not even recognizable in comparison to the difference between unlimited amount of dollars and $1 trillion.
Are you saying that because you're all Jewish here?
We should all have $1 trillion. L'chaim.
Fine.
But the idea is that when you have godliness or Ein Sof, which we spoke about in the third class, right, the infinite godliness, and you want to get to a stage of creations, like in our world, creations, not just creations, not spiritual creations, physical creations, and physical creations which aren't even aware of their source necessarily. We're not even aware of God, right? We don't feel Him. So where's the point when this journey starts? The journey that allows Seder Ishtalshalut, the divine chain that we spoke about, the chain of the four worlds. Where does it start? So the answer is Tzimtzum. In Kabbalah, it's called Tzimtzum, which means concealment, right? Litzamtzem. Tzimtzum shel ha'or, right? A concealment of the light. Okay, so open up your books. There's an interesting text from Rabbi Chaim Vital in Eitz Chaim. Rabbi Chaim Vital was a great Kabbalist in Tzfat, and he was a student of the Arizal. Arizal was like one of the first Kabbalists to write. He didn't write. He actually spoke, and his students wrote. He used to speak, and he used to speak in 1 hour what a regular person could only speak in 50 years, something like that. He was really, really
sharp.
Yeah, sharp is not the word. He was a freak in a way, like a freak of nature. Like he was such a genius, Anyhow, so his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, writes as follows. Before Atzilut was emanated, and before the creations were created, a simple divine light filled all of reality. It had no aspect of beginning or end. It's called Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. Right? So before Bereshit bara Elokim, before God created the heavens and the earth and everything like that, before that, it was just one big lightness. Right? And then when it arose in his will to create the worlds and to emanate Atzilut, he contracted his infinite light and an empty space emerged. So God decided, right, for whatever reason, to create, to have creations, right, to start working with something. So he basically completely contracted his infinite light, kind of moved it. And after that contraction, he projected downward a single straight line from his circular light, devolving into his empty space. Within this empty space, he emanated, created, fashioned, and made all the worlds. Okay, this is very interesting. So there's basically the circular light. Does anyone have any guess why it would be called a circular light? The infinite light?
No beginning and no
Exactly.
end.
So no beginning, no end. Okay. Circle just goes, but the line which he's talking about is already a limited version of the light. Okay. Obviously, again, we'll stress that we're not talking about literal things. It's very difficult as humans to think of all this theoretically, but this is all spiritual, in the spiritual world. Okay, so he had just pure light, and then it was aroused in his being to create. So he had to move everything aside, and from the circular light, he caused a line to devolve into the empty space, and in that empty space, he created.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the light you talk about, infinite light.
Yeah.
Is this God, or God is above the infinite light? Or we don't know.
God is above it.
Above it.
Yeah. God is the source of the light. The light, we spoke about this, I think, last time. Yeah, the light is not even actively created by God. The light is an automatic.
So it's connected.
It's connected, like, but the reason why we use light is because just like light, if you switch off the light, there's no light in the room. It doesn't stick around. Okay, because it's completely connected to the source. So to the energy of God is called light. We call it light for that reason. But when we say light, we just mean the light which comes out of him is the infinite light. It's not him himself. We don't talk about him himself because there's nothing to say. You can't. That's called atzmut, which I think I mentioned in the first class. Atzmut means God in relationship to himself entirely. But most of it, we're not going to really talk about God as, God. We're talking about everything he does, is what comes out of him, his trajectories, expressions, and so on and so forth. So yes, this is the highest that we're going to talk about. The Or Ein Sof is the highest we get, basically, in Kabbalah. Okay, you have a couple keywords. Or Ein Sof, this is we're reviewing a bit. We spoke about is God's infinite light. Sfirot is 10 attributes. We spoke about that last time. Elokut is an expression of God, not in his essential self. This is the answer to your question. We're talking about this light is Elokut, which means godliness, not God. Right? Yeah. Bia is the three spiritual worlds, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Yeshut is existence with self-awareness. And this is all things we spoke about last time. Yeshut is self-awareness, independence, right? How did this transition take place? The simple and divine light filled all reality. There was no beginning or end. Then you had to have this line, the tzimtzum, which was basically God removing this light and using a channeled line to enable the godliness to be in a limited way, to allow for creation. Okay, now keywords, the new keywords is Tzimtzum Harishon, the first contraction. The first act of concealment, enabling the transition from divine infinity to the divine Sefirot. Okay, the Tzamtzem in Hebrew, I think you still say that, right?
Yeah, Tzimtzum, yeah.
Tzimtzum is like meagerness, small amounts, right? Yeah. And then the Kav is like another Kabbalistic term, is God's manifestation of limited light from which the Sefirot arrives. So there's in Kabbalah, the igul, the circle, which refers to the complete, when there was just light, right? And there's the kav, which is the line that after the tzimtzum draws the light of the circle down to a line. Okay?
Nekudati.
Yeah.
Like a laser.
Yeah, basically.
So we're only like a friction of part of the friction.
So what example you can give? Tzimtzum?
An example I can give from tzimtzum is as follows. We're going to actually talk about this, but I'll give it a quick. The professor, back to our favorite example of a professor and students. So the professor has an incredible idea in his mind, right? And he wants to explain it to a bunch of 13-year-olds, right, or a bunch of kids. How does he do that? He's got to be mitzamtzem. He has to find an aspect in this sechel, in this idea, which he can draw down and explain it to the kids, right? And only like that they can receive it. If he's going to just give them the whole idea, they'll lose themselves, right? Just like if the light of the godly light was around, there's no space for the world. There's no space for anything independent. There's no space for any creation.
Too many trees, you can't see the forest.
Exactly. So that's the basic example we give. And then we're going to talk about the second tzimtzum a bit later. There's a laser is a good example. Another example is a window, like a window to light up the room. You have a window from the sunlight. You're not going to completely open up the room. You have project a certain amount of light into the room. Okay.
Have you ever used night vision goggles?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when you use night vision goggle as an army person, when you start firing your weapon, if there's too much fire, you have to remove it because you can't see. It's too much light. Yeah. Everything
Very
goes.
Yeah. Okay, this is what I said before, but we have to understand that this is all free of physical connotation. Do you guys know how this picture connects to that? To us, saying that this is abstract, not literal. I forgot the name of this story.
Isn't it Amelia Bedelia?
Yes.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That her mom said to her what was it?
Well,
hang the lights.
It's everything. So draw a bath.
She does everything literal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she draws a picture of a bath instead of running the bath.
Yeah.
Hang out the lights is like turn off the lights.
Hang out the lights,
Yeah,
and she hangs
literally
them.
hangs out.
So that,
Like a baby shower. You shower the baby before it's born. I did that.
yeah.
I saw the baby shower.
Baby shower. Yeah. So that's the idea. So we're saying, we spoke about that in Bia, we're not physical. We're not talking physical, right? We're not talking literal. So if in Bia, which is the lowest worlds, we're not talking physical, all the more so in Atzilut, which is even more spiritual, and all the more so in Or Ein Sof, which is even higher than that, even more spiritual than that. So we're not talking physical, removing light and these type of things. We have to try and strip the ideas from the physical meaning. Now let's in text 2a, there's a very important disclaimer, right? Which is basically the source of a lot of controversy in Jewish philosophy, and that is, do you say that God literally moved his light? or is it not literal? Right? So do we say that we're talking within the spiritual? We're not talking about physical or non-physical. We're saying within the spiritual. Did God actually move his light, or was it something else? Because if you say that he literally did it, then you're basically saying that there's something void of godliness, which we don't say. We say leis asar panui minei, which means there's no place that can exist without God. So if God completely removed his light, then you're basically saying that
there's a place with no God.
So that was the big difference between the Hasidim and the Mitnagdim, right? Which is those which opposed the Hasidic movement in Europe, which ended up with quite a big fight. And the first Rabbi of Chabad was put in jail, and he was freed, and the whole thing goes back. One of the arguments, right? It's like, how do you get put someone in jail for this? But it extended and everything. but one of the arguments was that the Masnagdim, right, which is the Litaim today, the Litvaks they're called. So they said God's not in the toilet, right? The question is God in the toilet? So and the Kabbalah says, right? Hasidic, our version of Kabbalah said, of course God is in the toilet. How could the toilet exist without God? So we're not saying that God is in the toilet, but you can't take him out of the toilet. That's the whole argument. So the same question boils down to this: do you say that the Tzimtzum is literal, or do you say that it's metaphorical, or if it's not so literal? So that was so here we have a disclaimer that basically, if you want to understand Tzimtzum, if you say it's literal, then you're basically an apikoros, which means you're contradicting the basic beliefs, right? Because number one, if you say that Tzimtzum is literal, then you're imposing an image on God, saying he's an image. It was a circle, and then he moved. All these images, right? And number two is that there's no place besides from God, and he's even in the lowest, dirtiest places. God exists, right? So you can't, you can't void a place from God. So the example of that, as we said once, is the sunlight, the same sunlight which shines into the king's chambers is the same sunlight which shines on the garbage dump. The sunlight doesn't change. Same thing with the godly energy, which gives life to everything constantly. The same godly energy which shines onto spiritual holy things shines onto the physical world, right? So anyway, the Alter Rebbe.
So you're saying that God is everything and everywhere.
Yeah.
So even a thief that goes and steals something, that energy comes from God.
Absolutely. Do you know what?
Just using it.
And you know what else is funny? A lot of times a thief will pray to God before he goes to steal and ask him to help him. Be
and he will help him, according to the Talmud.
Yeah, possibly.
If he got caught.
It says Ganva, you know what I'm talking about. Which means in Aramaic, it means a thief on the mouth of the tunnel calls out to God. And the idea is that we can live contradictory lives. Right? We can, on the one hand, know something is true, but we can go against that. We all do this. We're not innocent of this, right? But the most obvious example is a thief asking God for help.
So you have free choice.
Yeah, definitely, you got free choice. But anyway, so text number 3, we see the solution about this controversy of the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum does not mean that God's infinite light departed, God forbid. For in truth, there is no place devoid of him. The principle is also expressed in the Midrash. Why did God choose to reveal himself to Moses from within a thorn bush? To teach us that there is no place devoid of God's presence, even a thorn bush. So the Midrash says that why did God appear to Moshe in a bush, in a thorn bush? Right? The story when Moshe spoke to the bush, the burning bush. To tell us that God is everywhere, even in a thorn bush. And a thorn bush is a prickly place, right? But what does it mean? the Alter Rebbe explains. The Alter Rebbe, this is the first Rebbe of Chabad, wrote this, and he said that the tzimtzum means that the light went from a state of revelation to a state of concealment. So it's not that the light moved to the side, it's the light was withdrawn back into potential. Interesting, eh? So it was there still, but in a less realistic way, in a more of a concealed way. For example, let's say you develop a talent. You have a talent for music, and you develop it and stuff. Then, God forbid, something happens, and you forget it all, right? So or everything you learned is still there, but it's stored, like it's stored, concealed in your back into its source, like it goes back. So the same idea.
So you could tap into that or not?
Yeah, easier. It's easier to get back into it, right? After you forget, my kids knew Russian when we moved here, right? They had a fluent Russian, but now they all forgot it. But if they were to
go back for a couple of months,
they will come back very quickly because it's there. So the same thing with the godly light. In order for him to make space for creation, he took his overwhelming spiritual light and he brought it back into his potential, into the potential, like into concealed. He concealed it. Okay, so that's what happened. Okay, divine light filled all of the reality. It was revealed. God contracted it, concealed it. God projected a single straight line, which is a minor revelation. Now we have a new key term, which is gilui. Gilui in Hebrew is revelation, a reality, usually godliness, that is apparent. Something which you can see, which you can sense, something which is apparent, something which is not always tangible, but something which is detectable. That's a gilui. And when we say a godly revelation, it's a gilui elokut, right? Godly revelation. And the opposite of gilui is helen. Helen means concealment, a reality that is present but not apparent. Okay, so this is interesting. The word helen is, how do you say world in Hebrew? Olam. It's the same world. If you look at the letters, Ayin, Lamed, Men. So why is the world the same? Why is world the same word as concealment?
Why? It's the way it was created.
Because it's the world of concealment. We don't see the truth of everything. We don't see the source of everything right now. There's a shell covering. There's a light. Invisible. We're not aware of our
everything that's happened.
Yeah. So our world is olam hahelen, which means the world of concealment.
Smoke and mirrors.
It comes from the word helen. For example, the ocean. If you go for a swim and you see fish, the fish's oxygen comes from the water, right? But that's visible. The fish sees its source. The moment it's disconnected from the water, it dies, right? And that's very visible for everyone, for the fish included. People, we're not like that, right? We live our whole lives and we won't even realize that we have a creator who's constantly giving us energy and life, right? Real concealment. And the reason why that is that we have free choice, that we do the right thing, not because it comes easy, but because there's basically an equal choice, right and wrong, But anyhow, okay. Now back to the example of tzimtzum. You asked for an example. So the example is as follows. You have a Rav, a Talmud, a rabbi and a student, and the rabbi has the idea in his mind And the way he understands the idea, it has no relation to the student. Right? The student will never be able to grasp it. When he wants to give it over to the student, he has to contract a bit of the idea, right? One part of the idea, and give it over to the student, and then the student in turn takes that idea and builds on it, right? So when the rabbi is talking to his colleague, it's very different, the relationship than to a student. When he's talking to his colleague, there's no work on the rabbi's part to contract the ideas into small bite-sized ideas, right? When he's talking to his colleague, they're on the same level. So he throws a few words. His colleague knows what he means. He says that, and but when he's talking to a student, he has to do the work on himself before he gives it over. And that work, which happens inside the brain of the rabbi or the professor or the teacher, that is tzimtzum, the contraction.
So he's doing it for the benefit of the receiver.
Yeah. It's in order for the receiver to be able to understand. And then the student takes that piece of information and thinks about it. And he goes, oh, so that implies this, and that implies this. And then he builds up from that.
So what is the meaning of life, Rabbi?
So maybe the student can develop that to a bigger idea.
Possibly.
Yeah.
The student can eventually develop that. Well, it depends. If it's the rabbi's novel idea, it would be very hard to do it better than. But if the rabbi is giving over something that he himself studied, but he knows a lot of it, so the student eventually can, reach even more of an understanding of it. So here you have, on the left side, you have the parable. We're going to look at the parable, and on the right side is the analog. Okay. A genius has an abstract idea that's beyond ordinary students. That's point number one. The abstract idea has a minor implication that is relatable. There's one detail of this abstract idea which is relatable for the students. The minor implication is still part of the unattainable idea. We're not saying that the idea which the rabbi is going to give over to the student is something disconnected from the idea, from his original idea. It's a part of the idea. The abstract idea is removed from the genius's conscious thinking. The minor implication becomes discoverable and can be shared. Okay, so what the rabbi has to do in essence, the rabbi has to switch off his brain a bit. He has to close his eyes to his understanding of this in order to focus on the small idea, to focus on the student, right?
So the idea is the world. What are you trying to say?
We're gonna talk about the analog, but this is just a parable. This is the different steps of the parable. It's very important. This is actually probably the most common parable in Kabbalah and Chassidut, is between a teacher and a student. Or the whole process of giving over sechel, giving over ideas, is spoken about countless times. Yeah, tzimtzum and hashpa'ah and all these things.
Chassidut is tzimtzum also.
Yeah, what do you mean?
They made it like Baal Shem Tov, they made it easy for people to understand big concepts.
Even the Kabbalah, they make it easier for people like us
To understand, yes.
Yeah.
Like you understand bigger than what you pass it to us.
Way bigger. I mean, put it this way. All these things that we're talking about, I studied a lot throughout my years.
Yeah.
And then I'm reading this, I know all the info, but I'm like, oh, it's so nice the way they, make it simple and understand, you know what I mean? Yeah. But
You got any teacher?
For peasants like me.
I mean, listen, this is big stuff. It takes years to actually,
Even for us to analyze, to
Exactly.
understand
It's
that,
not,
it's
not
we're
easy.
gonna have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is. But anyhow, I hope you guys are with me though, right? You're not implying that you're lost. You guys
No,
are
You're
okay.
lost in infinite light, Rabbi.
Can we go for the beginning? Start all over again.
Okay. The genius, the teacher has an idea that is beyond the student. The idea has a minor implication that is relatable. The minor implication is still part of the unattainable idea. The abstract idea is removed from the conscious thinking of the teacher, and the minor implication becomes what he's going to give over. So we can actually read this. I think it might help us. Text number 4a. Kai, maybe you read this because it's your first time. Text number 4a.
The above parable allows us to appreciate the concept of consumption.
Text,
Ahead, you should be on 149.
yeah, 149.
Consider the example of a teacher imparting information to students. The profound concept the teacher understands is incompatible with the student's mental ability. True, the profound concept contains less significant elements that are compatible with the student's mind. Nevertheless, in the teacher's mind, these elements are filled with the profundity of the overall concept, and they therefore remain too deep to the main obstacle here is that there is no distinction in the teacher's mind between the core of the concept and its less significant elements. Consequently, if the teacher proceeds to transmit this knowledge to the students, the teacher will deliver the full profundity of the less significant elements. The students will understand none of it. The solution is for the teacher to conceal the entire concept, mentally pushing the whole idea aside to approach it anew. The teacher can now distinguish between the idea's core and the more significant elements. The teacher can then deliver the transmittable details without flooding the elements with the overwhelming complexity of the concept.
Right. Okay.
And his mind
Get it?
goes faster than
He's so
so my eyes can keep up with that.
So the idea is that the teacher has the big idea, and but in the teacher's brain, the small concept which is going to give over to the student is still part of the big idea. It's still full of this intellectual superiority over the student.
Does that become a challenge for the teacher then
Yeah.
as well? Because
This is the challenge. It's a
Yeah.
challenge for the teacher.
Yeah.
So this symptom, this contraction is a work on the teacher's part. It's like preparing for a class.
Yeah.
Put it that way. You know, you have a teacher which knows a lot about something, and he has to prepare for the class. One of the things you have to do is decide what not to say, as well as what to say. A lot of times that is more challenging than deciding what to say is what not to say. Because, or you know something about this, so you're gonna just go on and on and on, and you completely lose everyone, and they're gonna leave, and they're gonna have nothing to take away with them. So you have to decide what you're not gonna say first, right?
really edit.
Yeah, and then decide. Okay, there's this idea, which I can disconnect in my brain from the whole thing that I know about this whole concept, and give over this idea to the student.
But then you have to be able to reconnect it. at
Well,
some
I
point
think it's
after you
yeah.
laid the groundwork so that it all starts to build. a
Yeah.
foundation
Well,
of
you give
understanding.
them in bite sizes, and then you build it up, and then eventually, you also want the students to use their own work to build off. You don't want them just to parrot info that you've told them. You want them to have a bit of info and use that, ask a question, challenge a bit, grow a bit more. That's the real education.
Ask questions.
Stimulate. Yeah, ask questions.
Ask questions.
That's what we celebrate in Judaism.
Ah,
The whole Pesach is about
Benzin says that I have the condition. I asked
much
lots of questions. Now you know why.
Yeah, your DNA, exactly. Yeah, so that's what you want to do. You want to create within the student a vacuum that he'll want to know that to understand more. If you're just if the student doesn't care about this is a bit of a slightly different concept, but once we're already talking about it, we should talk about it. So that if the student doesn't care, he doesn't care, what you're going to say. It doesn't make any difference to him. So what are you expecting to go? You know what I mean? Well, he's obviously, even if he understands what you're saying and he'll repeat it back to you, but it will mean nothing to him. It will be meaningless to him. It won't change him. It won't touch him. He'll go home and he'll forget about it, and that's it. You wasted your time. In order for this lesson to be able to affect the student and inspire him, or the student needs to care about it.
It's relatable.
You have to create. So you know what I mean. There's a lot of things we do that's one of the reasons why I take money for the class.
Right.
So that you care. You wanna come out with something. If that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons. Okay. So anyhow, this is all the parable. The analog. Pay attention, guys. You have this map in your books as well. Page 151. The analog. The first step, which corresponds to the teacher's abstract idea beyond the students, is the infinite light that filled, the godly light which filled all reality with no room for a finite expression. So the circle, which we call the eagle, right? That is step number one. That's before the tzimtzum, right? You with me? And that's the teacher's idea, teacher's understanding of this concept. And then the abstract idea has a mind implication that is relatable. That is, God's infinity includes the power to be finite. Oh, this is interesting, right? Because we spoke about in the one of the previous classes, I don't remember exactly, that God has the potential to be finite, right? He has the potential, and that's part of his infinity. Because if you say he can't be finite, then he's not infinite, right? Then you just you're limiting him. Okay. Then you have this power to be finite is still part of the divine infinity, right? This is all within the godliness still. And then you have the concealment. God concealed his infinite light, which is when the teacher removes the idea from his conscious thinking of the whole concept, and he projects his finite power into the space of concealment. And that is when the teacher gives over this piece of info to the student. Okay. But what's important? All the steps are less important. The most important is the act of contraction, right? So there's the before, there's the infinite light. We're not going to do contraction, we'll do concealment. As we said, it was concealment, symptom, which allows the student to be able to relate to the light, which the line, which afterwards is used to create the energy stream, which is used to create creations, right? In the physical world, eventually to the physical.
So the physical world originated from the circle.
Everything originates from the circle because the line comes from the circle.
We existed in the circle before God created.
We existed in potential.
Or energy.
Yeah, we existed in potential though. We couldn't
be expressed.
Yeah, we could not be expressed. We existed because everything needs to have a source.
So is it
technically we didn't exist.
Is it transform of energy, or is it creating new energy?
Which one?
When it went through the symptom.
The symptom is not a new energy.
It's the same energy.
The same energy transformed into.
But are we at symptom?
We are after the symptom, of course.
We are after the symptom.
Of course.
Yeah.
In order for that to be Atzilut and Bria and Yetzirah and Asiyah, all the four worlds, any type of creation, there must be a symptom first. Just the light doesn't leave space for that. Right? If you just have the godly light, there's no space for any creations. Very good. Very, very good. That is when Hashem says to Moshe, right? Moses, that
No man will.
No, if you see me, you won't be able to lift
It
it.
can't exist.
So there's a tzimtzum, very important. Okay, so we'll give a short summary so get everyone back, back on track. We didn't actually say that much. We introduced the idea of a tzimtzum, and we introduced the idea of a tzimtzum, which the tzimtzum is the point where the infinite becomes finite, right? The infinite light can become finite to create. And that is through godly light being withdrawn, concealed, to allow space for something else. And we brought an example of the teacher and the student, right? When the teacher has a great idea, he must conceal the whole idea in order for the student to be able to understand something.
So when you pray every morning, you connect with the circle?
No.
Or what created the circle?
Who do you pray to?
No, when you pray to God,
Yeah.
so you try to connect with the energy.
You
the
do
source of
all
circle.
the whole thing, the whole Seder Shtalshalut, the whole.
Are you
chain.
trying to connect with the Atzilut?
No.
No.
No. Actually, the more close something is to us, the more meaning it has. So if I'm going to pray and I want to be inspired, I want to inspire myself through my meditation. So I better think about things in this world to make it meaningful, right? So I'll say, wow, look how beautiful the world is. Look at this incredible system, and look at the body, and look at the nature, and look at the trees and how everything grows. That will inspire me more than thinking about some abstract light, because great.
It's not physical.
You know what I mean? So prayer is about making things meaningful and real.
But in the Bible, when someone says, a prophet says, I spoke to God, God told me to tell you that.
Yeah.
Who did he speak to?
God himself. Yeah.
So he has an ability to create tzimtzum and talk to us.
Yeah.
So it's like, as he said, is a criminal. They're using God directly,
Yeah.
praying for God because they want directly to the source.
Yeah.
But normally you don't do that.
No. So I mean, we spoke about last one of the times Mamale Kol Alamin and Sovev Kol Alma, which means the energy which is in everything, specific to that thing. I don't know if we spoke about this. Sovev Kol Alma is the energy which surrounds everything. So the energy which is in everything is, you look around the world and you see all the incredible creations. If you just meditate on your biology for a few minutes, you'll be in awe of God, right? Unless you just want to deny it. It's all a mistake, right? You could do that as well. But if you want to be honest, right, and you sit there and you want to pray, so you can, before you pray, think about your biology, just how many trillions of cells you have and how each one is working perfectly. And if one of them goes off, you can get sick and chas v'chalila, and how the whole system is, how everything works, and all your emotions and so on and so forth. And that is the most basic, aspect of meditation in prayer. Then you can think about how Sovev Kol Alma, which means all this incredible things, is nothing for God. That's like but anyhow, you don't think about things which don't mean anything to you, because they don't help. Right? You can talk about, you can study them, but if you think about Or Ein Sof, if the student is to think about the idea, how it is in the teacher's mind, there's no relation to it. Because it's too, the student has to receive the idea that the teacher gave him and say, wow, that's amazing. That will cause him to want more,
So God created this world by tzimtzum and stayed here. He didn't just.
And we are the tzimtzum after the tzimtzum. Yeah.
We are a result of the tzimtzum.
But he's still here doing things.
Of course.
He hasn't left.
Do you think we're probably missing a sense that we cannot see that? Or
What'd you say?
are we missing a sense that we cannot see the things? Or our knowledge is really limited?
It's because we, after the tzimtzum, that's why we're
It wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but we don't, there's a lot of things we don't see. I know it's tzimtzum, but can we see above that?
Well, you can. if you become a tzaddik.
Oshy.
I can't see.
So I'm probably in the closet still.
You can, yeah. It's
One day you will for sure. You all will.
you can make it.
Certainly.
You can make it easier for yourself to live in awareness of your source of before tzimtzum.
Yeah.
You can make it, a part of your day. That's what we do when we pray. In essence, if you pray every day,
It's really awareness.
you train yourself to be aware of something. You look around, you say, "Wow, this is all concealment." Right, and this allows you to. This causes you to think about what's behind it all. Okay. Right. Now we have another tzimtzum. Page 153. We have page 153. The above described concealment sets the stage for several subsequent transitions, including from Atzilut, a state whereby divinity is manifested through 10 Sefirot, to the emergence of egocentric identity. This latter transformation is produced through a phenomenon that Kabbalah calls a dividing curtain. So this is might blow your mind, and that is everything we said about the Tzimtzum now, up until now, that is from the infinite light to the Or Ein Sof to get to Atzilut, right? Which we said Atzilut is completely egoless world. But now, how do you get from Atzilut to Biyah, to the ego, right? How do you get? So you need another Tzimtzum to make that transition. But that Tzimtzum is a different style of Tzimtzum. That Tzimtzum is called the Parsa, which is called a curtain, a concealing curtain. Concealing curtain. The Tzimtzum is a withdrawal of light. The concealing curtain is. So now, what's the difference between the light of the Tzimtzum Harishon, the first Tzimtzum, and the Parsa? A curtain. Let's say you cover a light with a curtain. You look through a curtain, so the light is not the same light. Okay, it's filtered light, but the light of the Tzimtzum is the same light. The kav, the line which comes out of after the Tzimtzum, that is the same light. So we're saying that from Or Ein Sof to Atzilut, it's the same light, just diminished, right? Concealed and then diminished. But the Tzimtzum, which is the Parsa, between Atzilut to Biyah, right, is a different, it's a filtered light. You take Masach, the word he uses is Masach, a screen. So let's have a look. Mickey, would you like to read this in Hebrew?
Text 5?
Yeah.
שכתוב בעץ חיים שבין אצילות לבריאה יש מסך ופרגוד, כי המסך הוא הלבוש המעלים ומסתיר, כדי שעל ידי זה יהיה בחינת יש ודבר נפרד. והוא כמשל המסך גשמי שמסתיר האור, לאף על פי שהאור בוקע המסך הוא רק אור של תולדה. ובמקום אחר מבואר גם כן עניין הפרסה, כמשל אותיות, המשל שמסתירים ומעלימים לגמרי עומק הנמשל. וכעניין משלי שלמה שהלביש רזין עילאים במשלים מעניינים גשמיים, הרי אותיות אלה מעלימים ומסתירים אור השכל, ומה שמושג מזה, איזו הערה, אין ארוך כלל לגבי עצם הרזין עילאים.
Yeah, so he says the idea of this parsa is number one, like a screen, right? When you have a screen, it is conceals the light. Some light comes through the screen, but that light is a secondary product of the original light. Another example of this parsa is a mashal, a parable, right? Like we just spoke about a parable and a analog. The parable is taking the idea and concealing it so that the student can understand. So we spoke about this professor and a student and this and that. That's not what we're trying to say. If you just leave the room after I've spoken about the professor and the student, you won't know any Kabbalah, right? You just stuck with the parable. The idea is to take the parable and reveal within the parable the light, the content which I wanted to give over. And the idea, and like Shlomo, King Solomon, he wrote Shir Hashirim. You know his Shir Hashirim, Baal Peh, for sure. The Song of Songs, which is like a romantic.
Not for kids.
Not for kids. It's the book of Song of Songs, which is basically it's a romantic, all about love and husband and wife and romance, jealousy and all these things. But it's all in mashal. It's all a parable for God and His people, right? The relationship that we have with God. So it's a beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's even very graphic sometimes. שיר השירים.
שני שדר כשני עופרים, תאומי צביעה. רואים בשושן, אתה לא מכיר את זה?
It's because the Sephardim read it every week, no? Every Friday they say it.
Really?
I don't know it. He knows it better.
I remember as a child reading it, and I was like, that's not for kids.
You discover what you know from
It's
Shir
very
Hashirim.
graphic.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember reading it in that bit about like your teeth are like white, like a flock of sheep. I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment.
Back in the day, when
Yeah. Flock of sheep.
you
I guess, yeah, people have black teeth then.
No,
Sure.
that's
Miss it.
lots of secrets in there.
Yeah. So in the Shir Hashirim, King Solomon isn't just writing a romance, piece. He is telling us, something about the relationship between us and God, and so on and so forth. So now you can just take the mashal, you can just take the parable, and you won't have the content. The idea is like the parsa is sometimes by concealing the light, it becomes relatable, becomes meaningful, becomes the student is able to receive it because you conceal it. If you just give him the raw content, it's not. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, hoped that we would not just read it and say, "Oh, this is explicit." We would understand what he means, right? That's the old way of giving over information, cryptic, Talmud. No one just tells you everything. Yeah, we give you a bit of a. Gotta work for it.
Use your brain.
Exactly. That's the. Okay, that's the second symptom. So, open up your maps a second. We'll have a look at the map. Does everyone have a map? Do I have a map? The idea is.
It's good. That's when finance starts.
Okay, I've got one here.
The one you said that?
Yeah.
So, do you guys see where it says Oren Sof? So after Oren Sof, you have the Tzimtzum Harishon, number 5.
Yeah.
This is today's class.
Yeah.
After that, previous class, Tohu, Keter, and then the whole 10 attributes,
Yeah.
and then Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, and everything else. Sorry, Bria, Yitzira, that was Atzilut, and then Bria, Yitzira, right? Now it doesn't have. Oh yeah, it does. Sorry, and Parsa. You see the Parsa
on the bottom. Yeah.
On the bottom, it does have the Parsa, which is in between Atzilut, all these 10, and the next worlds. The Parsa is that is the Parsa is the second symptom we just talked about, the filtration, the concealment, which we spoke about, to allow things to become egoistic and self-aware. Atzilut is not. Atzilut is the world of emanation. It's just a mirror of the divine. In order for Bria and Yitzira and Asiya, and ultimately us, in the world of Asiya HaGashmit, which means the physical Asiya, to be able to exist and have free choice and concealment, there needs to be these steps of concealment.
But maybe there's more that we don't know yet.
Oh, there's plenty more. What do you mean?
No, I'm saying maybe because this was revealed to us by that Rabbi, Rabbi Shimon.
Yeah.
Maybe over time God will reveal more.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe we think this is it. But
No,
maybe
we
there's
know.
more.
We know this is not it. We know this is not it. We know that whatever we can talk about, that this is only a small drop of the ocean. You know, if medicine and mathematics takes years and years for someone to, if someone says, "I know all math," right? If someone says, "I know all of history," right? It's impossible to, you know, everything, every single detail, and then you think about that, it's a physical thing. Think about God, to understand godliness, which is unlimited. Someone to say, "I know the whole Kabbalah," that's even more of a joke. Yes, but the idea is that the Tzimtzum, is a contraction. It's a big step, and then you have things which kind of evolve, one from the other, one from the other. Then you have a parsa, which again is a big step, and then things evolve again, evolution, right? From Yetzirah, from Beriah to Yetzirah to Asiyah, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'll put on the video now. And oh.
Welcome to our 5th video on the world of Kabbalah, a journey through the mystical layers of the Kabbalistic system. We previously described the disparity between God's infinite light and the 10 sfirot of Atzilut that have definitions and distinctions, and therefore limitations. How can absolute infinite divinity give way to a finite form of divinity, the 10 sfirot? The transition cannot be gradual because it's impossible for infinity to devolve into something finite. So what enabled such a drastic leap? The good news is that 16th century Rabbi Yitzhak Luria explained this puzzle. The bad news is that it's a complex topic. So we'll just give a sample here. The idea is called tzimtzum, which means contraction. God contracted his infinite light, disrupting its infinity to support the emergence of the finite sfirot. The Kabbalists used metaphoric imagery. God pushed aside the light to form an empty void, into which he beamed the same straight light of illumination that devolved into the cosmos. Now, if that's not mysterious, nothing is. So let's clarify. The Tzimtzum did not remove God from anywhere or anything. So what did it achieve? Well, if you recall, in an earlier video, we described a scientist struggling to share an abstract, complex theory with teenage minds. He's forced to pause and rethink his presentation. After identifying a relatable detail within the theory, he shares just that detail with the students, who are blown away at the genius of it. It took the scientists time and effort to identify the detail. Why is that? Because the detail was lost in the forest of the complex theory. It didn't have its own identity. So how did he identify it? He stopped focusing on the theory. The idea remained in his mind, but he decreased the intensity of his focus, which created the mental space to hone in on a minor detail. That's the tzimtzum. Nothing is impossible for God. He has both the ability to be infinite and to be finite. The difference is that his infinity is naturally revealed. That's the infinite light. While his ability to be finite is lost in the background, like the scientific detail overlooked in the context of a complex theory. Just as the scientist reduced his focus on the entire theory to allow a detail to become visible, so did God reduce the focus on his infinite power to allow his finite power to operate. So when the Kabbalists say that God made an empty space for creation, it's not actual space and it's not actually empty. It's a shift between two layers of divine focus. And when they talk of a single straight line, they mean God's ability to be finite, which is what allowed the 10 Sfirot, finite forms of divinity, to emerge. How is that relevant to us? We exist thanks to the process of Tzimtzum, but the Tzimtzum is not a true withdrawal, just a concealment of focus. So even when we feel that God is withdrawn from our world, it pays to remember that we remain within God's infinite light, although it's concealed from our perception. Knowing that makes it easier to personally relate to God. And the fact that God initiated this drastic step of Tzimtzum to make space for our existence should inspire us to create space for His presence in our lives. After all, it's just a matter of focus.
All right. Okay. So we spoke about this. The new world is Parsa. The light is altered. Concealment. Okay, that's next. Okay. Right now, let's talk a bit about how all this applies to our, a bit more practical. Okay, so let's talk about narcissism for a second. Narcissism, self-centeredness, someone which only sees themselves, doesn't have space for someone else, and is completely self-absorbed, right? So that is a person without a tzimtzum. That is the person which is just living like the infinite light. Okay, have a look on text 6a. Those who are self-obsessed and narcissistic become engrossed in their desires and wishes and completely forget about God. Similarly, their self-obsession preludes loving others. You can't love someone else. The self-love generates divisiveness because it doesn't allow them to tolerate others. They think that whatever someone else says or does is directed against them. Right? It's all about them. We all know these people. There was an incident that well illustrates this point. A fellow who happened to be a tremendous scholar and well-versed in Torah once had a private audience with my great-grandfather, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, which is the Tzemach Tzedek. And he said, Rebbe, he complained, the others all stepping all over me in the study hall, right? Dorchim alai bebet hamedrash, which means they're stepping on me in the synagogue, in the study hall. They don't appreciate what I have to say. They don't listen to me, right? Everyone's offending me. They don't behave properly towards me, and they do exact opposite of my opinion. The Rebbe said, because you are spread out everywhere, wherever they step, it's going to be on you. The idea is your ego is everywhere. You put yourself where you don't belong. So therefore, wherever someone else is going to say, whatever he says is aimed to you. It's an attack on you because
You're everywhere.
Yeah. I think this is quite a practical thing in life. How many times in life do we take someone offended us, right? Offended us. And then if you think about it for a minute, you realize that why did you impose yourself over there? He's arguing, he said this, he said that. Some places, leave yourself out of things, Let people figure stuff out. Especially if you know that someone's not going to listen to you. If you know he's not going to listen, if you know there's no one to talk to, don't even go there, Don't spread yourself out too much, right? Like the orange soft, like the infinite light. Have a bit of tzimtzum. That's the lesson.
You're not exposed, yeah.
It happens with parents and kids sometimes as well. Like the way your kid is disobeying you, like he's 21. Give him a break, let him make his own decision. You shouldn't be, telling him what to do at this point. Or with spouses, of course. You gotta sometimes l'shachrer. I say l'shachrer.
Let go.
let go of things. Allow people to make their own decision without your genius advice. And then he says over here, the Rebbe says that the reason why this story was brought about a scholar in a study hall is to show you that even in holy things, your ego can extend. We're not saying only that ego can be extended, is extended in mundane things, but even in holy things, right? So if you do a mitzvah, if you do something special, you can get very touchy about it,
That's your ego after that?
Yeah, you got to be careful, even with good things, to not spread yourself around too much. You think you're too much of a tzaddik, and you get all. Okay, so this is an important thing, and this is the way you overcome this is through avodah, which means character refinement, refining your character, self-work. All that we're studying, all that we're learning, it all boils down to self-work. It's got to be practical. That's why we talk every class. We try and talk about how these things are
relatable.
Yeah, because it's all about working on yourself, taming your animal soul, as we said last time, right? So here's a key word for us, and that is avodah, which means work in Hebrew, toil. But what it means in Kabbalah is working to enhance one's character and to become more aware of God, and often facilitated by immersive prayer, right? So prayer allows you, immersive prayer, not just saying the words, but meditating on what you say. That is like a bit of a training for your animal soul. It's huh? And
David said,
what is that?
I'm a worm, not even. He said that when he got the kingship, and they
Who said that?
King David said.
Okay, that's number one. So the first thing we can learn from the Tzimtzum is not to be like the infinite light before the Tzimtzum, not to spread yourself everywhere, and because just like the infinite light, there was no space for creation. So if you're spread out everywhere, you don't allow anyone else. You're not allowing anyone else in your life. You're everything is offensive. Everything is in your is in your face. Everything is bothering you. When you're very agitated, maybe ask yourself.
Is it because you take things personally?
This is it's the same idea. Why are you taking things personally? Why are you?
Everything's about you.
No one's. Okay, that's number one. And number two is another idea is that just like God kind of put himself aside, his greatness, his great light, in order for us to be able to be here, right? So when you think about that, you'll want to cling to God more. That's what he said in the video as well. That will cause you to have a will to, he's so great. And and if it was just him, there's no space for anything. But he put himself aside to allow us to come into being. So when you meditate upon that idea, that will inspire you to want to cling to him more, to want to cling to the reality of things. Okay. Page 160. In Judaism, the night comes before the day, right? So when's Hanukkah? It's on the 7th of December, right? Is it on the day of the 7th of December? No, it means the 7th of December. The first day of Hanukkah is the 8th of December. Am I saying correct? Yeah, I think the first day of Hanukkah is the 8th of December, but you light the candles, Erev, right, which is the 7th at night. And you light 2 candles, the 8th at night.
Shabbat, Friday night.
So why we do that?
So I'm about to explain. Shabbat, Friday night starts from the night, and then Shabbat goes out Saturday night, right? In the secular week, there's the day, it's until midnight, from midnight, but in by us it's nightfall, right? First, and the reason is, it says in the Torah, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Echad. When God created the world, it says there was an evening and there was a day, one day. There was evening, there was day, 2 days, right? There was first evening and then light. There was first darkness and then light. First evening and then
the light.
from darkness comes the light. Same idea with this. Okay, let's read this. Would anyone like to read? Amit, maybe
Where about?
text 8a, 160, page 160.
ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. הרי אין יום אם לא שקדם הערב לבוקר דווקא. מה זה דווקא? ויש להבין למה לא נקרא יום רק כששחור מערב ובוקר, ולא כשכולו יום וכולו לילה, ודווקא לילה קדם ליום. שורש העניין הוא כידוע שבשורש ובמקור הבריאה מעין ליש היה גם כן על ידי ערב ובוקר, חושך קודם לאור, צמצום ודין תחילה וקודם לחסד זה, שאז נמשך מבחינת חיבור שתי אלה בכל העולמות עד עולם הזה שפר? שהלילה קודם ליום בעולם הזה אין בשמי. סוד חשוב.
It's very important that this light comes after darkness. In order for there to be this beautiful world that we live in, and the spiritual world and the physical world and everything which is going on, that is because there was a tzimtzum, there was a concealment, right? First there was concealment, and then that allows for the and that's why night comes before day, and that's why Shabbat starts on Friday night and then day, and that's why this in everything we do night and then day. Darkness preceding to light, and so on.
So does that mean there's something bad happening to you? Very dark. That means there's something really
Very
good
good,
happening.
very good.
Is that right?
Exactly. No, that's exactly what we're about to say. Yeah, darkness. What is the first divine? Oh, what is the first divine concealment for the sake of revelation?
So if something bad happened to a Jewish person, he's dancing because
That's it.
he knows something good is coming.
תגיד לחבר שלנו.
The source, the darkness of night is rooted in tzimtzum. The light of day is rooted in the kav that manifests God's limited capabilities. Okay? Now, this is exactly what Mickey is saying. I'll actually read it inside. I'll read it in English. We see these the same pattern in the world. If an individual, whereby individuals do not achieve growth in wealth, leadership, building a family, study, any other accomplishment, without first experiencing humiliation, pain, loss, and similar and the like. For example, they say that the only place where success is before work is in a dictionary. Because the word is individuals engaged in study will not arrive at a complete understanding of the subject without a lot of toil and stress, feeling distant from the understanding and tempted to despair from mastering the subject. It's only when you're like, okay, I'm about to give up. And only when you're about to give up, that's when you'll understand. Doesn't mean you should give up straight away.
One more step.
Indeed, the Talmud says one does not understand statements of Torah without first being mistaken. So part of reaching the understanding is going through mistakes. We observe the same thing with a livelihood. You can only succeed only after putting forth great effort and enjoying much pain, even feeling despair. Only thereafter do we find profit and great blessing. So like if your marriage is too good, you don't fight, something's wrong. If you never fight, you're not going anywhere. You're not growing. You know what I mean?
Stagnant.
It's just you're just like two friends. You're like two friends. You don't want to be two friends. You want to bring out the best of each other, right? And the same thing with everything. If things are going easy in something, something's not right. There's gotta be failure. There's gotta be struggle. You gotta struggle in order to achieve success. Yeah. This is the way that God's blessings flow in the upper worlds and travel down to the lowest. There is no light without the darkness that precedes it. Like it says, Lapum Tsara Agra, which means according to the pain is the reward. That's how God decided to give us livelihood and blessings and light is through work and struggle.
You take the seed, you put it in the ground, you bury it.
Exactly. You have to work.
Put water in it.
You have to work. You have
Having
to
a
plow.
baby, it's the same thing. Pain.
All. Tell me somewhere where there's growth without pain.
Doesn't exist. Not in this world. Anyway.
Yeah. Or success without.
So you should be happy when you have challenges.
So the internal meaning of your challenges is good. The inner meaning of your challenges is good. Don't despair. That's the idea here. Is don't despair. Don't let your challenges bring you down. So this is the answer to our question. We asked at the beginning of the class that what is the strength that will be able to hold us and to keep us strong when we're going through incredible challenges in life is knowing that this is the darkness which leads to the light, and the true essence of the darkness and the meaning of the darkness is the light. So you're not even experiencing real darkness. You're experiencing light masked in darkness. The true meaning now, and that's why the old Hasidic Jews used to rejoice when things were bad. Like you say, you dance when something bad happens. Yeah, because you know that this is bringing to light. Easier said than done. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Chabad Rebbe, lived in the Soviet Union, and he was arrested in 1927, and he was tortured. He was supposed to be shot. That was his punishment, right? What was his sin? He promoted religion in the Soviet Union, Judaism. He had a network of Jewish schools and mikvahs and everything like that. And he defied the communists. The communists were out to get him. And you can ask your father about this Soviet Union, Sovietsky Soyuz, it's called in Russian. And they arrested him eventually, and they were supposed to kill him. But then there was a whole chain of events, a miracle. He ended up surviving, and he was just sent to exile for a bit to a place called Kostroma, which is like
that doesn't sound like a nice place.
which is a remote town in Russia. And he was tortured really badly. And he came eventually to America, and he could barely move. He was paralyzed and everything. And he said that if someone was to offer to sell me, a single moment of additional suffering for $1 billion, I would not buy. But if someone would offer to purchase a single moment of my past suffering for $1 billion, I would not sell. So he didn't want more suffering, but he knew that he wasn't ready to give up on the suffering that he realized the power that it had, and that brought him to who he is. And he eventually started the whole Chabad idea that we go out and outreach and creating communities around and stuff. That was his brainchild in the 40s. Anyways, there we go. That's it for today. Let's
that's a really good message.
In psychology, I forgot to mention this. Sorry. In psychology, it's called post-traumatic growth. Right? When someone goes through a trauma, they grow from it. They could grow from it.
Lesson 5.
Let's watch this.
The Great Concealment. 1. The human tendency for self-absorption leads one to deny others the space to express themselves. It is essential to utilize the power of personal tzimtzum to not needlessly impose ourselves upon the rightful domain of others. This is primarily accomplished through avoda, the work of enhancing one's character. 2. Pondering the extent to which God exercised tzimtzum out of his love for us can inspire us to intentionally create space for God in our daily lives. 3. The path to success is frequently obscured by hardship. To achieve our aspirations, it is essential to realize that the drawbacks are steps towards success.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oshy.
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye.
Next
Thank you. Bye.
Next week, yeah. Bye. Next week is the
Bye.
last,